Yeah, I'm doing a little more rust repair, and one of the things to watch out for is you get rust around a windshield here, and you know it's from chips. In other words, a stone chip hits it, and then it basically hits a rust through. So what I'm going to do is I got a little funnel here made from a little plastic Dixie cup. Just cut the end off, and it'll fit in here just like this, correct? And I'm going to pour a little bit of chassis saver in there. And the way, like I said, I showed like with chassis saver is I put them in these little glass containers, and the lids come off. See, they don't get stuck. I greased the top of the lids. It's a plastic lid on glass with some heavy-duty chassis grease, so the paint doesn't get stuck. I found it a lot easier to put it in these little jars so I can use a little bit at a time and buy a big gallon economically. But I figured since water got in here, there's surface rust all through here. So what I'm going to do, and there's a little holes down here on the bottom, so I covered it up with some Gorilla Tape. I'm going to pour chassis saver in here, and it's going to fill all along here where there's probably surface rust or corrosion, where the two seams of metal join in this, you know, piece right here, and I'll kill that rust. And what I'm going to do is I have the jack underneath the car, so I'm going to lift this side of the car up so all the chassis saver runs down that way, and it seals that up really good. So, you know, even though I'm going to be closing this up and sealing this up, I'm going to get all around this windshield with the windshield frame with chassis saver on the inside. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to pour it in here with a funnel. So anyway, I think that's a good tip, because you don't want to be, you know, you could buy new parts, but I don't really think this needs a new part. It just has a little hole here, a little hole here, a little hole here, and a little hole here. So nothing too much. And what I'm actually going to patch this with is I'm going to dimple this down, grind it down, dimple it down after, you know, I get inside with chassis saver, and I'm going to use a little piece of patch panel steel. I'm not going to weld it in. I'm going to use the panel adhesive, and the back of the steel is going to be totally coated with panel adhesive. So, you know, if like when you weld, you always got a problem where you might have a porous weld, or you have a spot where water can still get corrosion on it, exposed metal, because you burnt the, you know, when you weld, you can't really paint after the weld unless you use the weld through primer. And so, but you know, using the panel adhesive is going to be good. And I'm actually going to go in here with a Q-tip and get all up and around here where this hole is. So actually it'll be a very good repair, and it'll be very permanent. So I figured that's a little tip to pass on. Been killing rust on this thing. There's very little left. This is the big spot. There's a tiny little hole behind the wheel, about that big. It'll be filled in. A tiny little bit of rust right here starting to come through. This will be fixed too, and from there we'll be getting ready to another step. I'm just going to tell you right now, even like I took the top off of this, I'm throwing this in this video, but on a future video I'm going to put another top on here. I've been researching what tops are the best. I had a best top on here, and I got it in 1998 or 7, and it's been outside. The window is just starting to crack now, and when I took it off, so I'm going to get a replacement. But best top is one of the best ones around. I probably will get a Smitty built though, because it's only 150 bucks. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And the other thing is, if you take the top off a lot, I'm throwing that on this video, but if you take the top off and on a lot, you want a top that's high quality, but you don't want really heavy material, because it's more of a pain in the ass to take off. So I don't know, we'll see how that one is. It looks like a very high quality top, so I'm going to put that on another video. But this, I think, is an important little rust prevention measure. Also, by the way, if you have problems around here with this cracking, what you can do is you can cut out a piece of steel and use the pop rivet it onto here, brace this up, and also use the panel adhesive where it's over that. You don't have to weld it. You don't really have to weld it. You can use pop rivets and panel adhesive. That panel adhesive crap is some strong junk. I actually used it down here. I need to grind it down to fill in some holes where rust were. It's totally impervious to water. It's 100 times better than fiberglass, I think, in my opinion. Well, I filled up inside there very well, and it's pretty good. It's actually not too rusty. Now I'm going to grind that down and make a little steel plate. And like I said, on the inside, I've already coated it with chassis saver with that Q-tip. And now that I have the vehicle jacked up, it's sitting on an angle. It's all pouring down to the other side of the windshield. So all across the bottom is coated with chassis saver. That's where the water would have accumulated and any kind of surface rust would be, where the two metal pieces join together right here on this edge, on that lip. So that should be taking care of it on the inside. I got a tiny little hole on the top. I'm going to do the same thing on there, but I'm going to take this off. I already got this soaking with some screws that hold this on, this rubber thing, which holds on the top. You can see the slot. That's where the top goes into. I'm going to take that off and make sure everything, all the paint isn't screwed up there. I'll actually give it a coat of black chassis saver because that is not exposed to the sunlight. But what's going to happen with this is I may coat this whole windshield frame, not the windshield itself, of course, with chassis saver, and then paint over it with scuff it up, and then paint over it with what you call it, maybe not the whole thing. I think maybe there's the rust spots. I'll probably hit it with Rust-Oleum rust killing primer, then go over it with truck bed lining, spray truck bed lining. So if this gets hit with a rock, it will not chip, it will not form any rust. You know, in other words, if they can't get through the paint, I'm going to hit all the areas with truck bed lining. And actually what's going to happen is after that, when this whole thing gets painted, I'm going to use a cheap acrylic enamel, single stage solid black acrylic enamel with the catalyst, and I'm actually going to paint over the truck bed lining. But first I'll sand the truck bed lining down a little bit, so it'll kind of look like a textured finish but still shiny black, so it'll look like the same color. But certain areas of this little Jeep will be pretty impervious to rocks and stuff by having the truck bed lining under the paint. So I think that'll be a good way of doing it. Anyway, so on to the next step. I'm going to be filling this in with some steel plates and grinding that down. First, grinding down, put some steel plates and what do you call it, using the panel adhesive. And that'll actually be very impervious because the panel adhesive on the back is going to be coated with the steel plate is going to be coated with panel adhesive on the back. There'll be no exposed metal on the back side of this. Like when you're welding, you'd have a problem with that. It will not be the case the way I'm doing it. Yeah, I've been taking out the little screws along the top here, and it looks like there was a little rust spot up here that got underneath the rubber. So what I'm going to do, like I said, like the same thing I did on the bottom down there, where I just poured chassis saver inside the actual windshield frame, because that's where the water would have been. If there's any surface rust in there, chassis saver is going to pretty much lock it in. And I'm going to actually fill that hole in with panel adhesive, which I'll tell you the truth, that's expensive stuff to be using, almost like body filler, but it is impervious to water and it's as strong as damn metal. It's some tough stuff. So what I'll do is I'll pour some chassis saver in there, coat the inside with a Q-tip with chassis saver, grind out all the rust. In other words, it's not going to be welded, but it's still going to be, the rust will be stopped cold, and that's the most important thing. And this thing, I'm going to go over all this stuff with some chassis saver black. Anywhere there's some kind of rust, just touch it up, because where it starts is where the big problems happen. You know, it's not something where I'm playing show car crap here, obviously, but what I'm saying is, you know, on a Jeep it doesn't have to be, but my point is I hate rust. I see a little start in here, chassis saver's going over all that, chassis saver's going over this, where the top rubs here, and I'll paint over that. I'll paint just plain enamel over that, but the thing is, it won't rub through the chassis saver because that junk's like iron. So That's the way to do it. You know, it's not like, in other words, it still looks presentable. It'll still look presentable, but the main thing is you don't want rust. I hate rust. I hate rust, period. Now, on the end of this, there's like this is like a rubber vinyl piece that holds the top in along the edge. It was cracked, and on both ends, actually right here, not totally split through. But what I did was I chemically cleaned it and plastic emblem and trim adhesive to glue it back together, which it'll hold it. It'll hold it very solid. It's not cracked all the way through, but wide by parts. Now the other thing is I'm going to actually coat these screws with chassis saver, silver chassis saver, and I'm also going to put chassis saver in the holes on the top of the windshield frame as we go here. You know, this little nitpicky crap is what makes the difference, because you know it'll rust here. Then you see what happened here. This actually is a much bigger hole than I thought. I figured it was going to be a pretty good size hole. I'm going to grind this out. There's no rust on the inside. I'm actually going to put a little chassis saver down in here through with a, just like I did down here with the little paper Dixie cup. Pour it down in here just in case there's anything starting. And I'll fill this in. I might put a metal plate over this, a tiny metal plate with that panel adhesive. Tiny little metal plate over these two things, the panel adhesive, after I grind them out. These will be touched up with black chassis saver. Then after this all dries, I'm going to grease this. This will be greased and with very heavy chassis grease, and then we will put the actual molding on there that holds the top in. Now the one good thing is I have this thing I made, which is like a carport. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. The walls on it are very solid. The top is just a vinyl thing, you know. So basically that's all it is. It's a little like temporary type carport. But this is one of the main reasons I didn't do a lot of work on this thing over the years, because you know, if you start something, I'd had to do whatever I did. I'd have to complete the next step because of the weather. This, now I can leave this to dry. I could pull it back in there. So anybody that's doing this type of little stuff, if you make yourself a carport, or you buy one of those temporary cloth carports, makes a huge difference because you're out of the weather, so you can get a lot more done. Well, you can see where I poured all the chassis saver down in there, quite a bit of it, and there's some little bit of rust down here. I had to fold down a windshield. So also I'm going to take these off anywhere there's a little bit of surface rust on them. I used to touch them up with paint, but now I'm going to use chassis saver, which I think when that gets on there, it's not going to chip off too easily. It's not going to wear off. These bolts came out nice and easy that were up in here because I always greased them. And it is kind of fun driving this thing with the windshield down. You flip the mirror around, it points up this way. Actually, you change it around, and you can still use the rear view mirror, and you have to tie down the windshield. Most Samurais, I don't think they actually have the fold down windshield. Like I said, this is Jimny 1300. But like I said, this is just starting here. Started up the air compressor. I'm going to blow it out with some air, and just going to brush this down a little bit and go over it with the chassis saver. The chassis saver sticks really good to rust. I'm going to clean it up with a little brake clean and leave it rough with the rust and let the chassis saver really lock in there. And you know, it's I'll tell you what, this thing, I think this thing is actually better than the Volkswagen Beetle. I used to have a Beetle, and to tell you the truth, I like this damn thing. 1300 cc's, economical, four-wheel drive, low, and you can take the top off. Simple as all hell. Simple as all hell. It's a great little vehicle. Yeah, when I was looking for a Jeep, I was looking for one with a half doors, and this was kind of rare to find, and I wanted black, and there's a reason for it, because you know, I'm using black chassis saver on this right now, and actually I'm probably going to let this thing sit and dry overnight before I mess around with doing anything else. But all these spots that are exposed metal, I cleaned them off with some brake clean, And you know, you get in this seam right here, it's a little bit of rust, but hey, so what? So what happens is this junk, it's not like paint, man. It's shit really freaking locks in there like porcelain. And the rougher the surface, as long as it's chemically clean, as long as it doesn't have grease on it, and I cleaned it with brake clean and compressed air and knocked off the loose rust, it'll really get in there, man. It'll actually lock on there better than if it's clean bare metal. If you got clean bare metal, you don't want to put this stuff on there. But if you've got stuff like a little bit of rust, this is what you want to use. This is what you want to use, like right on these edges. Where all this junk starts, tiny bit of rust becomes a major problem. I mean, that's one damn good reason to have a black Jeep, because you know, I'm going to paint it, like I said, it's going to be 50% truck bed lining on the top, and where the hood is, around this fender area. This will be shiny black, and then I'm going to use a cheap enamel on this junk, but I know it's going to get screwed up anyway. And point is, you got this black chassis saver, you can pretty much stop all the rust cold right when it starts, and that's it. That's the deal, man. You don't want rust. If you don't have rust, your vehicle pretty much lasts forever, because everything else on it can be rebuilt for over and over and over again. It's something simple like this. Very simple thing. Another thing to watch for, a lot of times this cracks over here. It could get rusty, and if it starts to rust, gets a little weak, then it cracks. So I'd put chassis saver all around here. This is where the windshield wiper comes through the windshield frame. So that's something else to do. All this nitpicky stuff is why this damn vehicle, which is a 1985, is almost rust free. Pretty close to it. It's got a little surface rust on it left to get rid of. Okay, so I went around all this area where there's just a slight amount of rust with the chassis saver, and well, it's all on here, you know, just where there's a little surface rust. Now, like I said, I chemically cleaned it with some brake clean, blew it off with air, wiped it off with a clean rag and all that stuff. Went around here, you know, there's a little bit of rust right up there, just a tiny bit over here, stuff like that. So I'm going to tell you, even though this is minor shit, hey, rust starts someplace. This is why this car has been pretty damn rust free for all these 30 years plus, whatever the hell this is. It's about almost 30 years old now. It's 29 years old. So you know, how many Suzuki Samurais you see in the Northeast and in Japan that are not rusted out? Not too many, right? This is not an Arizona car. This is not a California car, nothing like that. This has been in areas that rust a lot, and that's why I've been keeping after it. So anyway, hopefully I don't have to make this into another clip, but all this little nitpicky stuff makes a big difference. Just keep after it.